Welcome back to episode 132 of the Disorganized was a Club podcast. My name is Alex. I'm here with Cam.
Hey.
And joining us from across the country, Adam.
Hello. It's me.
Joining us from the motherland back home in Alberta. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Yeah, been busy. Been a busy time out here, you know. I already got a mean farmer's tan on.
Already? How long have you been gone for?
Oh, dude. I've been gone a week. I have an incredibly red neck already.
Yeah,
we knew that.
That's just par for the course, you know?
I'm not even kidding. I'll send you a picture. Like, my chest just pale white with just a burnt, complete red neck. And I haven't even gone to the ranch yet. Like, I'm going branding this weekend and ranching all weekend, so it's going to be even worse.
Oh, man. But that's kind of what you expect when you go back home, right?
I worked outside for 2 summers. And
yeah.
just insane farmer's tan.
Yeah. But we've got a lot to talk about this week. Lots of stuff happening in Magic. This past weekend, SEG Louisville, won by Dredge. Man, this deck. I mean, back-to-back really good weekends for Oliver Tomiko, taking second at SEG Syracuse the weekend before, and now taking down this Open with Dredge. Pretty...
Yeah, that kid's good, man.
Yeah, he kind of skyrocketed up the leaderboard, too. It's going to be a really interesting invitational next weekend. But looking at this Dredge deck, it looks normal to me. Just kind of a normal top 8. You got some blue-white control, a couple of humans decks. You got Titan Shift, 2 Dredge. Is it Phoenix? Amulet Titan. Really nothing too crazy going on in Modern.
Some humans decks. I watched a bit of coverage, and they were saying that it was kind of a humans weekend, like it sort of made a resurgence in popularity. I didn't watch enough coverage to see if that was actually true, but I'll believe them. But like, what would have changed? Because humans was not popular 2 weeks ago. What's it good against now that is popular?
Well, humans is just one of those decks that's kind of always around, right? It it was very popular at the Mythic Championship in London. And I mean, it's just one of those decks people aren't going to stop playing, you know? And I can't really fault anyone for playing it. It's a super powerful deck. Like, it has its bad matchups in Tron, which I think is one of the more popular decks right now, as it picked up Karn the Great Creator, shiny new toy, and a lot of people have been jamming that card. But speaking of Karn, there was a lot of talk about Karn going into this weekend, but it looks like, especially in a deck like Amulet Titan, but it looks like the best performing deck from the weekend, Matthew Dilks, finished 5th. He didn't play Karn at all in his main deck. He was just more of a straightforward Titan deck with main deck Hive Mind. So I don't know, maybe the hype around Karn and certain strategies is a little overhyped, I guess, but I don't really know much about this deck.
It's probably overhyped a bit, but at the same time, I think it's fine it's going to depend on matchups, I think, and what you're worried about hate-wise. But the sort of like core, strategy of Titan is to just exploit, Titan, and sort of how you win can be, accomplished in different ways. So I think it just lines up in like what you're expecting and what you think people might name with Meddling Mage, where it's like that might, change your decision on whether you include Karn or not. That might have been a consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I agree with you there. I know some of the SEG teams, I'm trying to remember what they are, like Team Nova, Team Lotus Box. A lot of them brought out, I think most of them brought out Is It Phoenix. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of that deck in this top 32. A few, I think.
Man, I watched a bit of coverage where it just it was in the win and ins. So one of the guys who won played against humans in the win and in, and it just looked like if your draw lines up against humans, it was such a one-sided stomp. Like, they had the gut shot for the Thalia on the draw, so they had 1 mana to pay for the gut shot, bolted the next thing, and the game was just basically over at that point. Like, they just flipped the thing in the ice. Like, yeah, Is It Phoenix seems just like such a safe choice into a resurgence of humans, right?
Mm-hmm. Looks like Finale of Promise has made its way into these main decks. Saheeli as well in the sideboard.
That's just like a time-honored tradition in Modern Blue. Well, time-honored for maybe a year or so now, of just including standard playable Planeswalkers in your sideboard in Modern. Saheeli replaced Ral, right? Like, he's not showing up anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
You just got to have some...
Yeah, what happened to Ral, man? Bring him back, poor guy.
Did he get killed in the story?
No. No, he's still alive and well.
Oh, but he got sent after someone to go
Yeah,
kill
he
them.
has to. Who's he hunting down? He's hunting down either Tezzeret or Dovin. It's one of the two. I can't remember.
It's probably they probably send the smarter guy after Dovin, right? Because like Tezzeret's easy to find. You just give anyone a metal detector.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Regardless, anyway.
Did you see the article Ross wrote about the hand he didn't keep?
I saw a tweet about it.
So I watched that live and I was like, there's no way you shipped this hand. And he shipped it. And even coverage was like, wait, what? And it was like, it's really interesting for readers interested in it. Like you can read an article. He published an article about, sort of justifying why he shipped this hand. That was just insane, basically, I think. But
yeah,
it's pretty interesting. It was weird to see.
Yeah, he explained the math behind it and kind of on the surface, the hand seemed like a snap keep to pretty much everybody watching, including the commentators. But he shipped it back, and after kind of reading his explanation, it kind of does make sense. I'm still not sure if I would have shipped it back, but I can understand where he was coming from, and it's a really interesting thought experiment for sure.
Yeah, I mean, zero chance I shipped that hand even after thinking about it for a long time, but yeah.
Yeah.
Also, he lost that game, so hashtag scoreboard.
Yeah, definitely. So also, there's a whole bunch of standard going on this past weekend. Cam and I had our MCQ here in Ottawa, hosted by the Wizard Tower, your sponsor of the DWC Podcast since day one. Hit them up, wizardtower.com.
They have free shipping on singles orders over $15, I believe, in Canada.
Yeah, so Adam, if you want to get some singles while you're over in Alberta from the tower, wizardtower.com.
Oh, man. Lord knows I'm going to have to do this. It's a desert out here, both figuratively and literally. Yeah, the Palliser region of Alberta, let me tell you, it's actually a desert in the Badlands. But the other thing is, yeah, people out here, man, like there's one store, but it like doesn't really have good stock just because it's such a small community here that they just like, you can't just like buy a play set of boluses or something. You know what I mean? That's just not happening out here. And so, yeah, for anyone listening out here in the boonies, support your local card store, obviously, as much as you can. But then, when that fails,
wizardtower.com.
Support our local card store.
Yeah. Because I went to play like a standard, whatever. They have like Showdown still, and I went to go play and like I just borrowed some kid's Black White Knights deck because I didn't bring any cards. And I felt like I was cheating because his deck had History of Benalius and everyone else is just playing with like chaff,
Yeah.
Wow.
Jeez.
Just a big net decker stomping through Little Town Magic.
You filthy net decker.
Yeah, dude. Hey, man, the store owner lent me the deck, so that made it even feel worse because it's like he has access to cards,
But yeah, the Wizard Tower Mythic Championship qualifier was taken down by Bant Nexus in the hand of a Montreal player, Matt Stein, who actually took out Cam in round 2, then took out me in round 3, back to back.
I should have won that match, but due to my lack of practice in paper, I missed 3 key triggers to lose game 3, and he drew exactly what he needed to punish me. So there's a bit of karma. I was supposed to lose that game, and his deck killed me. So
yeah, I missed a line to
absolutely love to see an instant punish. Big fan.
I missed a line 2 to name Elder Spell off a Tamiyo Plus, which would allow me to ultimate a Vraska and kill my opponent right away. And I didn't think about it, so I plussed my Tamiyo naming something else and then flipped over the Elder Spell and realized immediately I could have just won there. And then he was able to attack it down to a low loyalty with his Carnage Tyrant, and I was never able to pick that Elder Spell back up, and I ended up losing. So that was my one loss that knocked me out of top 8. Aside from that, it was a pretty fun tournament. I played 4-color Dread Hoard. Cam, you played Esper.
I played not well. I had a bad day.
But yeah, dude, it wasn't Esper Hero, right? It was Esper Planeswalkers.
I played, Esper Planeswalkers, Esper Super Friends. It's kind of, I think, what just Esper Control has become in order to react to the Teferi 3s being prevalent in the meta. They stopped playing counterspells, started playing just sort of more sorcery speed threats in Planeswalkers. You're still a 4 Kaya's Wrath deck. You still have spot removal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really good round 1 against Green-Red because they just can't deal with Kaya's Wrath on their turn. And then I lost a close match to Matt Nexus, as I discussed. And then whether it was just more karma for my mistakes or because I was on tilt or a combination of all of these things, I just could not win a match the rest of the game. I did win a match because my opponent didn't show up, but I lost a game while doing that. So
Right on.
I sat down at the table and someone sat across from me. We both thought that we asked each other our names correctly. And so we played one game in which I get absolutely smashed. And then we realized that he's supposed to be one table over and neither of our opponents showed up. So I won that round, 0-1. And then we get paired next round and he smashes me for real.
Right on.
Yeah.
That's so good. Get right.
Yeah, he was on Phoenix, but Phoenix/Blue Red Wizards. And one turn he just had a Dreadhorde Arcanist and something else in play. Just played an Adeliz, played 2 Samet Sprint, flashed one back, and I just took 16 out of nowhere.
Jeez. Man. Yeah, so
Dude, Samet Sprint giving haste and +2/+1 is actually sweet. That card nuts.
I ended up going 4-2-1, missing top 8 by one win. Round 1, I got an unintentional draw because I played the mirror. The game was nuts too. My opponent drove up from Toronto. He was on almost an identical 75. But game 1, he cast Command the Dreadhorde first, which is basically all the matchup is about, is whoever can cast it first. And he brought back 3 Planeswalkers, a whole bunch of Explorer dudes with a Wild Growth Walker. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, holy crap, I'm so dead. I should probably just concede right now. And then I'm like, wait, there's probably still a chance. And then I think 30 minutes later, I won that game. And then game 2, he won in less than 10 minutes. So we ran out of time in game 3, which was unfortunate. But luckily, I only had to play the matchup one more time that day, or 2. I played the matchup 2 more times that day, but both of them ended pretty quickly. While my opponent played Dreadhorde again in round 2 and in round 3, and both of them went 30 minutes overtime, which was brutal.
Yeah, I think I haven't confirmed this. I wasn't in the crowd of people watching this game, but I think they were in turns, and then they had to bring have a judge call because someone command the Dreadhorde back 2 Massacre Girls at once onto a board that included such things as what I heard was a 27-30 Wild Growth Walker. And so the players were just please resolve this for us. We don't know what's going to die.
Yeah, and no kidding, this round, it went probably 30 to 40 minutes overtime. That's how long it took. It was horrible. The tournament was fun. There's a whole variety of decks in top 8. We had Bant Nexus. There was Esper Hero. Is it Phoenix? Simic Nexus. Another Esper Hero deck. 4-color Dreadhorde made it. And a Jeskai Planeswalkers deck, as well as 1 mono red. So it was a pretty diverse field. Looking at the metagame breakdown here, there was a whole crap ton of decks. It was a super fun tournament. It was nice to play old style PTQ again.
Yeah, it was fun. And looking at this breakdown for which decks showed up to our MCQ, it's about what I would expect if you account for how fast Standard has been changing online. If you sort of randomly distributed into the past 3 weeks when people picked to build a paper deck, this is the meta you'd get.
Yeah. On top of this Standard tournament, there was also the Mythic Championship qualifier weekend for Arena. So everyone who finished top 1,000 Mythic for the past couple months got to play in a 2-day event, had to go 8-1 or better to make the second day. And then 125 players duked it out for 16 slots to the first Arena Mythic Championship. They posted all 125 decks from the day 2, and we kind of broke them down between the top 16. There was 2 Esper Walkers, 3 Blue-Red Phoenix, a white Weenie splashing blue, a Simic Nexus, a Jund Chain Whirler, Sultai Dreadhorde, 3 Gruul Aggros, 2 Golgari decks, 1 Bant Midrange, and 1 Mono Red. And I actually think this is super interesting because out of all the decks, Mono Red was the most played. There's 36 copies of it in day 2, and only 1 of them made the top 16. Whereas you have other decks like Is It Phoenix with 5 copies in day 2, 3 of them made the top 16, as well as both copies of Golgari making the top 16.
Casualties of war, baby, get out of my way.
Yeah, man, the Japanese MPL players really just smashed it wide open, just built the perfect deck to take advantage of all these super greedy Planeswalker decks.
Oh, I definitely felt like I got paired against this like green-black deck on Arena when I was still playing like Esper Super Friend stuff. And I guess it was the day after it did well, so I hadn't heard about it yet. And yeah, I just got like my first land Field of Ruin. I was like, okay, go get a swamp. Then my second and third lands got Field of Ruin, and then like a land got Assassin Trophied, and I'm just like on 2 lands. I'm like, this is a really bad matchup.
Yeah, the same thing happened to me. I hadn't seen any of the MPL decks, and I was trying out Esper Planeswalkers. And my first opponent I got paired at was green black, and they just Field of Ruined me out of the game. And then I like kind of am in it, even though I'm missing my white mana, but I have a Planeswalker in play, and then he just like blows up my Oath of Kaya, my Planeswalker, and another one of my lands.
Casualties of War.
I guess I'm like, I guess that's a thing. Holy. But that deck seems sweet. I'm not sure how much game it has against the rest of the format, but it really, really preys on these greedy Planeswalker decks.
Clearly, it has enough against the rest of the format. I don't know exactly how the matchups play out because I haven't played with the deck enough, but it did well in this event, and the Japanese players have been doing well with it, so clearly it's good.
Yeah.
It just got the Explore package, right? Like that. Those decks can only be so bad.
Yeah, that's true. I'm really...
Yeah, the floor on the Explore package is like already high. You know what I mean? Like it's just always gonna be good. And then like you just sort of build your deck around what else you expect in the meta. And I feel like that's sort of what they did, right? Is like all the mid-range decks sort of end up looking the same in this format just because like the Explore package is essentially oppressive as far as green creature deck building goes, because it's the only way you get just free wins in a lot of matchups. And then you just sort of adjust your top end accordingly, right? Which is like, in this case, Casualties of War and other things, but you know, in some cases it's being a Bant deck. In some cases it's being Sultai. It's just, you know what I mean? But the Explore package as the base is sort of just the defining feature of so many mid-range decks because it's just so good.
Mm-hmm. And so really now, with how fast this format has been changing from week to week, and you know, seeing this top 16 and the huge variety of decks in it, like where, as a standard player, if you have a big tournament coming up, like where are you starting?
It's probably the same advice applies here as you would give to people choosing a deck in Modern. Like, make sure you pick a deck that's good, but among the good ones, this wide range of decks that have done well, you can play whatever you like and just understand your matchups. I think that's kind of what you expect, is that the larger standard gets, the closer it gets to Modern.
Yeah, and then also on top of that, yeah, just adjust your main deck like I was just mentioning about, you know, in this case we have Casualties of War, but whatever. I think also, though, there might be something to playing something proactive. Like we see 3 copies of Blue-Red Phoenix and 3 copies of Green-Red Aggro in that top 16. That actually, like, those are both proactive, aggressive decks that can kill Planeswalkers. Like Girl Spellbreaker and Phoenix can both sort of deal with Planeswalkers, but they're also just decks that are good against the field broadly. So I think like decks like that might be a good choice. I would never play Green-Red Aggro, but you know, I think there's merit to that decision.
Why wouldn't you play Green-Red Aggro?
I would just be bored. I don't know. I play it online sometimes when I get frustrated when I'm losing to Super Friends a bunch, and then I just Girl Spellbreaker them back to the Stone Age, and it's pretty easy. Jund Chainwhirler is interesting in that top 16 too, because I feel like Chainwhirler actually probably just, as a card, just super good against all the Super Friends decks too, and it's just a powerful card in general. But yeah, like Cam said, I think it's just about understanding your matchups and then adjusting your deck accordingly to whatever the new hotness is, or however you can stretch your deck to address issues, and just know your sideboard and your matchups and what they look like, and you should be fine. You can basically play anything, it feels like right now, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, looking at these results, I think that just solidifies that thought completely.
Yeah, and I think some of these lists they have some unique card choices, which kind of show that players were doing exactly what we're discussing. Like, I think at least one of these Gruul aggro decks had some Living Twisters in it. The 3-mana 2/5 from War of the Spark.
Yep.
And a friend of mine who visited, because he was on a layover in Ottawa, was actually discussing this, that like he's considering or was thinking about playing Gruul aggro with Living Twister because it just shores up your mono red and mono white matchups even more. And the deck's already sort of built to take out the Planeswalker decks. So it's just the tuning to the other matchups.
Yeah, I think that addition was amazing, because looking at this metagame for day 2, almost 29% of the meta was mono red. And like, how are they ever getting through a 2/5?
Yeah, and it shocks things. Like,
Yeah. You're never getting through a 2/5.
Yeah, no, that thing is the wall that's over.
Yeah, like Gruul really just looked like it was positioned amazingly in this metagame. Like you can prey on mono red, you get to prey on these Planeswalker decks, as Gruul Spellbreaker literally is just a bedevil on a 3/3. And I mean,
yeah, that's so true. Actually, just because the trample, hexproof, like they can't really do anything about it. It always just picks off planeswalkers. I've also noticed that about Nissa 5, and I've been putting it in more and more even green mid-range sideboard decks because of you talking about in the past how good it was for you out of the board. Nissa 5, like Nissa Who Shakes the World, also just feels like that to me sometimes, where they slam a planeswalker thinking they're safe, and then I just kill it with Nissa.
mhm.
is she the only, like, quote unquote, hasty planeswalker? Sarkhan feels like he should be, but he's not. It might only be Nissa.
Well,
if
yeah,
you have
I think
planeswalkers sitting
it
around,
is,
then
but-
Sarkhan does.
Yeah, that's kind of just standard for Nissa's like design. Like she always kind of has that same effect: animate a land, turn it into a creature with haste.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's Nissa Who Shakes the World, so she's got to be ready to rumble.
Aside from this, it looks like there were some sweet decks. Like there was a mono green Tron deck in day 2. Only one copy though. Ended up getting destroyed. Adam, have you been playing the mono green deck? I think you mentioned last week that you were gonna mess around with it.
Yeah, I mean it's fun, but man, it's bad. Like,
Who would have thought?
it's super fun, and there are games where, okay, so here's my take on it. There are games where it feels so incredibly powerful, and then there are matchups where you lose to single Thought Erasure and you just do nothing and die.
Yeah.
Like it's like a deck that's just so glass cannon, but not even in a good way, because it just doesn't. It actually has no resiliency if you get your hand stripped apart, because then you're either top decking lands, which do nothing, or you're top decking ramp, which actually is just do nothing because you need a payoff card, or you're top decking a payoff card before you ramp if you get your hand ripped apart. So just like, I don't know, it has no way out. Like I just don't understand just not playing blue green. Like the blue green version I've been playing recently, I was ranting to you guys in a group chat that the blue-green version I've been playing lately I'm only playing Finale of Revelation a lot, just because it digs you out of exactly those situations when you're playing a ramp deck where you get your hand ripped apart and you used resources to ramp. You kind of got to make those up somehow. And so I've had some turn 5 Finale of Revelations for 10, which I think I sent you guys some screenshots of, which feels pretty sweet. But yeah, the mono green list is cool, and like it does have some really interesting gameplay decisions. Like Karn is very interesting in that regard. That, you know, the sort of sideboard toolbox that you can go for. Like you can Crucible of Worlds decks out of the game, or you can go get Sorcerer's Spyglass against Super Friends decks. That's cool, but if they're being proactive, the green ramp deck can't really win. But you have a good Super Friends matchup and a few other things. So that's my take: is just play blue green and mass manipulation people instead. Feels way better.
Mm.
Yeah, it makes sense that there were a few lists / archetypes that kind of cropped up in retaliation to these Super Friends decks and have very good matchups there, but maybe not across the rest of the board. And if those get sort of tuned or take hints from other decks, then like they could become, you know, well-rounded contenders.
Yeah, there was a lot of hype around Martin Mueller's Esper Hero deck. I know he had a really good day 1. He ended up missing by a match on day 2, but he's playing Hero of Precinct 1 without Thief of Sanity in the main deck, which I actually think is pretty interesting, because looking at this metagame and the prevalence of mono red, and you know how these Izzet Phoenix decks are doing good, and even these Gruul decks, I believe, all these decks are playing shocks.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of seems like a really bad time to be playing a 3-mana 2/2 in your deck, you know? Like it lines up pretty poorly against Teferi as well, and all these decks just seem to really take advantage of it. So I really like this strategy of 4 Hero and 4 Basilica Bellhaunt as your only creatures in this deck.
Love the 4 Basilica Bellhaunt. I think that's actually really good right now. And this is basically just a tap out Esper control list at this point, but it has Hero to be able to pressure Planeswalkers in the mirror, which is perfect. It does exactly what you want. So yeah, I like that he kind of is just adding Hero. You know, this is sort of a hybrid between Hero and Super Friends, right?
Yeah, you've got Elder Spell, you've got a 1 of Command the Dread Horde. It's kind of right down the middle. And from what I've seen, a lot of people tweeting around about this deck, it seems really good. It fills a nice little space in the metagame where you can take advantage of the mono red decks and also be really well set up to battle the other Planeswalker mid-range decks.
So I was trying. I didn't do like a hybrid main deck, but I played an evening of Arena where I had an Esper Hero list game 1, but then my sideboard was just 4 Narset, 4 Kaya's Wrath, like 2 Elder Spell, like the rest of Esper Planeswalkers, and I would just take out the creatures for that. And it was fine because people would always sideboard wrong. Mm-hmm. But I guess you can just do it main.
One thing, though, to say, which is super interesting from this metagame breakdown, is that Esper Control is unplayable. Do not sleeve up Esper Control anytime soon. Oh my god, that deck is not good. I think you were right that just all the Esper Control players just kind of have jumped over onto the Esper Super Friends train, and they've got rid of their absorbs and replaced them with Narsets and Teferis.
It only takes one game where your opponent's on the play and plays a Teferi 3, and your draw step is like an absorb and anything else that is a counterspell for you to not want those cards in your deck anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cam and I were talking about this before I left, like the night before I left, I think, and we were saying like Teferi 3 just is got to be the most format warping card in Standard just because of this. Like, it's single-handedly just changed everything. And yeah, because you can't play absorb, you can't play a bunch of spells. It's super weird.
I've noticed there's been a lot of talk about these 3-mana planeswalkers being problematic. What do you guys think about that?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I mean, if you want to complain, we don't get to cast Frilled Mystics, then like I'm not really listening to that. I don't really think, Frilled Mystic being an all-star in Standard is a standard I want to be in. I think it's okay for this to happen once in a while, and I don't think it's going to be. I think it remains. It's just going to be if it's as oppressive for the next year. Like if it's another year of just Narset and Teferi 3, then yeah, maybe that's annoying. But I feel like you can build strategies that don't really care as much. I just think it's because we're in big Standard. They seem.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at all these decks in the metagames. There are strategies you can take that will take advantage of these 3-mana planeswalkers.
Yeah, there's definitely Standard is diverse in strategies that you can pick. All of the strategies were sort of built with these planeswalkers in mind, but I would still say that they're maybe not. I wouldn't call them problematic entirely, but they're definitely questionable design decisions. And what I don't like about Teferi 3 in particular is that he has entirely removed an aspect of Standard gameplay from the format.
So yeah, I'll agree with that. I mean, I think Teferi 3 is the only one I would find actually offensive. I don't think Narset or the other 3-mana planeswalkers are necessarily that bad. I think Narset's fine. But there's something about Teferi 3 just completely shutting off avenues of play. The fact that, sure, it killed Bant Nexus and we kind of celebrate that, but that maybe is a problem that a single main deckable card just shuts off an entire archetype. That's maybe not a good sign. And then it didn't just shut off that archetype. It also shut off control with counterspells.
Well, counterspells are cheats, boys. No one likes counterspells. Come on.
That's the point I was going to make, is that playing against Teferi 3 is annoying, but also usually in Standard when there's a good control deck, you get control mirrors where, it's the quote-unquote boring to watch, where it's land, go for 8 turns, but there's a lot of positioning with counter spells or with draw spells to set up your hand. There's big counter wars over threats. That's the timing is very important, and I like playing these matchups, and I think that they're interesting to watch. And that matchup just doesn't exist because other decks play Teferi 3.
Yeah, but could you make the argument that with the static abilities on planeswalkers and this new kind of design and how the format is kind of shaped up, that really this Standard in recent memory is probably one of the most skill-intensive ones?
No.
Why?
Because, so many of your decisions don't matter in this Standard. Okay, so here's my complaint about this Standard. It feels like it is the least skill-intensive that it's been in a while. The Standards that people didn't like, with a lot of red-black aggro, or a lot of, to go even further back, Mardu Vehicles Mirrors or Mardu Vehicle versus 4 Colors of Healy, there weren't a lot of matchups, but the matchups were not particularly easy to play. You had to understand them. An example of this is okay, so take the Teamer Energy Mirror. Even if this was frequent, it was an incredibly interesting mirror because both players had large stockpiles of energy that they could choose to use in multiple ways. So each player could craft a game plan based on what they've seen their opponent doing, and you could play the deck differently depending on what's happened. There were a lot of choices, and your choices mattered on how you used your resources. What I don't like about this Standard is that there are not a lot of choices on what on resources that you have to include in your deck. Like Dovin's Veto is very good. You should probably play it. You need to play Elder Spell to counter these Planeswalkers. But these cards don't have other modes. If you draw them, they do one thing, and they do one thing incredibly well. And the flip side is that if you draw Dovin's Veto before your opponent plays Teferi, it's nuts. If your opponent plays Teferi first, then your Dovin's Veto does nothing. If they draw creatures out of Dreadhorde and don't draw their Planeswalkers, and you have an Elder Spell, it does nothing. Whereas in other games, if they draw Planeswalkers first, your Elder Spell absolutely ranches them. Like these cards all have one mode, and they're all incredibly good or incredibly bad, and you don't have any choices to make. You just cast them based on what your opponent's done, and it's just kind of obvious who wins or who loses. Like I don't feel like many decisions matter in this standard format.
Yeah, but I think beyond like those couple examples you mentioned, like this is specifically in like a matchup where you're playing in a Planeswalker deck with, access to Elder Spell or Dovin's Veto, but like
But I think it's all across the format too. Even like the green-red decks, like they have all these like hasty creatures, like your Gruul Spellbreakers and your Legion War Bosses and stuff, designed to be able to pick off Planeswalkers. And it's good there if your opponent has drawn Planeswalkers and are trying to do that. But if they just wait and Kaya's Wrath you, those cards are trash and you can't win. Out of the same deck, like matchups just flip one way or the other so incredibly quickly. It feels based on the way players have drawn their cards. And I don't feel like there's many choices that change that because of the linearity of a lot of this card design. I don't know, maybe you disagree with this, Adam.
No, I agree. I actually think that sounds pretty accurate description of what's happening. I think this is one of the formats where the skill maybe isn't necessarily in the decision making at the sort of smaller micro level, but more so the sort of metagame level where you have these broad stroke decisions and deck building costs and deck building decisions and sideboarding decisions. I think sideboarding still matters, and the sort of skill in the standard format is demonstrated through a lot of those decisions as opposed to microplay decisions. I actually agree that the gameplay is a bit of an issue. I think that, I would say the exact same thing about this limited format. Like I think this limited format's it suffers from the same problem. I've talked about this at length actually on the podcast, I think, regarding limited format, but I think it actually bears out in standard actually in similar ways. But I think, so I think maybe at the level of gameplay, it's definitely not as skill intensive. Like I'm never sitting there like, oh God, like what do I do? It's always, I don't know, it always feels kind of obvious, but I always feel like the matches I lose, I did something wrong, like in my deck building or my sideboarding. I feel like that's where I got punished. And so I think having a tight 75 and how you go about playing is what determines the skill in this format. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Couldn't you say though that is an argument for this format being more skill intensive because there's so much more that matters beyond just the gameplay?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a different expression of it. Like, I think those things can, because of what Cam's describing in like the Teamer Energy mirrors, that there was no decision about what deck to play. Like you knew what deck you were playing. Yeah. I mean, you could lose if you wanted to, sure. Like you could 0-2 drop with a different deck, whatever. But if you wanted to win, you were playing energy, and so the skill there came down to sort of gameplay. I just think I don't think like comparing like this is most or more skill intensive than other formats is exactly what's happening. I think that sort of paints both distinct aspects of the standard formats with too broad of a brush, where is if you say, okay, well, as far as deck building, sideboarding, and sort of metagame decision making, this format is very skill intensive, but I don't think at the gameplay level it's very skill intensive. I think that's a more like accurate statement to make, perhaps.
Yeah, they're probably like, it's hard to compare skill intensivity. They're probably similar. I just feel like it's less skill intensive because I don't enjoy the gameplay, and that takes that's 40 minutes of a round, whereas sideboarding is 10 minutes, and so that's what I remember, and that's the impression that it leaves.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I don't think the gameplay is particularly memorable in this format. It always just feels like a steamroll, basically. Although there are obviously exceptions. Like again, I don't want to say in one way or another any extreme on this example, but Yeah, I think that's what it is that you just are sort of rewarded for those things you're saying, but the gameplay lasts a lot longer. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's fine. Like, I don't mind it. I think the standard format's fun and sort of just exploring different decks, and that's sort of how I've enjoyed it. Is an expression of sort of how I've built decks and how they interact with what's going on and what I've been playing against. But yeah, at the gameplay level, I don't find it as intricate. But maybe that's an issue of certain mirrors and stuff as well. It's hard to say, but I think this, like I said, this format at the skill testing level, as far as metagame construction, is definitely a high skill format. But yeah, at the gameplay level, I don't think it's that interesting. But I think that's also fine. It's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. I do like how diverse the standard format is, for sure. Whether or not you guys agree on the skill intensiveness of it, but I think it is really cool that playing on ladder, on a span of 10 matches, you could just play 10 different decks, and all of them are like super competitive. And
yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that actually might be, and obviously this is going to be something that remains to be seen. I think that might be an expression of Arena, actually, because like, before, when metagames move slower and people can't test things out, it's just people can only play red-black vehicles or energy because there's no other. You're not going to waste $80 at a Grand Prix to test your deck against other competitive decks. Same with Moto. You're not going to waste money, but on Arena, you can really test things very quickly and against other competitive decks. So I wonder if in the future even we'll see more evolved and diverse metagames just because of the Arena and the number of games and amount of people playing.
Yeah, I actually think you're hitting the nail on the head there, because I mean, when you think about how people got their information about metagames before Arena, it was mostly, Grand Prix results, the Pro Tour, and then Moto 5.0 lists. And when it comes to Moto 5.0 lists, they post them every 2-3 days. And then, but now it's kind of like the age of Twitter, whereas, pros in the MPL or just pro players are constantly posting, oh, hey, hit Mythic with this deck, or Arena. There's the Arena deck lists Twitter account now that's constantly retweeting people who are hitting Mythic with multiple different decks. And there's just so much more information about different decks out there now. And you're not seeing this small little, look in on Moto 5.0 lists anymore. There's just way more information out there. And I think
for sure.
Yeah, and that it's really
go ahead. Yeah, we're on a bit of a delay, sorry.
Yeah, it's really kind of showing now with just how diverse this, day 2 metagame of the Mythic qualifier weekend was, or even the metagame of the PTQ we played in this past weekend. Like, there's so many decks. People are trying out a whole bunch of different stuff, and it's really we're so far away from those standard, red black aggro standard format where there was three playable decks and everything else was just kind of fringe unplayable garbage, where really any one of these decks could take down a tournament on any given weekend.
Nah, not only that, if you had told me that, I don't know, if you had told me like mono green Tron took one of those spots, I'd be like, oh wow, but I'd believe you. I think the deck sucks, but I'm saying that right now, it's not surprising to see almost anything win, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Which I think is cool, and also sort of speaks to some sort of skill in at least in some level of, at least it rewards players who understand how their deck matches up against 40 other decks. So that's cool.
Kind of drawing some similarities to Modern there without the silver bullet sideboard plan that Modern seems to.
Yeah, Modern has silver bullet sideboard cards, but as I was explaining, Standard has silver bullet main deck cards. Look at Mueller's Esper Hero. It's playing one Command the Dreadhorde. If that is not a silver bullet main deck card for the Command the Dreadhorde matchup, then it just is. Or
yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that is kind of, for example, I think that Elder Spell being a main deckable card is really bad for the format. I will say that. I don't think it'll stay that way, and if it does, those decks will just get punished out by green red and things like that. But I don't like that Elder Spell's a main deckable sort of way to win. I think that's not ideal.
Well, isn't it a little bit different, because not only can it also plays as a win condition in your own deck by killing your own stuff, really?
Yeah, that's actually why I don't like it.
Oh, really?
I don't like that you can just alt your Teferi on turn 7 the turn you play it, just because you have Like you can ult your Teferi 5 because you had a Teferi 3 and a Narset stick around, and then you just splinter twin them basically because you ult Teferi on turn 7 and they just die, you know?
It's like similar kind of play patterns to Karn the Great Creator in Modern, right? Like it's this card that can be your win condition if you are able to pull it off, but it also just randomly hoses other decks you play against.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm just not a huge fan of that. But you know, other than that, like, yeah, I don't think the gameplay is particularly great. It's fine. But I think the sort of meta decisions, like the fact that Casualties of War is just an all-star right now, is awesome. Like I've been ranting about that card for a long time and how sweet it is. So I'm just stoked to see it. You know?
Yeah, for sure. Do we have any big events coming up anytime soon?
I don't know. Not that I'm aware of.
Well, I'm gonna go ride some horses and lasso some cattle this weekend. I don't know. Is that a big event?
That is
Yeah,
a big
Feeling
event.
like a big old Alberta boy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just a beefy boy.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt like because I did a bunch of prep for Syracuse and then this MCQ, and those were kind of like the two things that felt like that I needed to do for standard. And afterwards, I just stopped playing standard because I don't know. I guess in the back of my mind, I felt like I was done with it for a while. So I don't think there's any events coming up.
Yeah, unless you're making that top 1,000 Mythic push.
Yeah, that's probably the next like biggest standard event that most people are going to be dealing with. Isn't that like there's 1 day left or something?
Yeah, for this month, and then it resets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then you have all of next month to qualify for the next weekend, I believe.
Right. Now that I'm like not super focused on like trying to do well in standard events, the little bit that I have played, I've just been trying sort of funner things. Like for instance, I was playing Hero, but I put 4 disinformation campaigns in the deck because it makes a 1/1. But you can also pick it up with the Fairy 3. So like if you're playing against creature decks, you just pick up your Oath of Kaias, and that's good. But if you're playing against like a mirror or a control deck, or a planeswalker deck, you just pick up your disinformation campaigns instead. It's all right.
That is a combo.
It sure is. Especially once you have your, turn 7 Teferi emblem, then your Teferi 3 picks up a disinformation campaign, exile something, play it, they discard, you draw a card, exile something.
Wow. So lucky to be able to keep playing at that point, and your opponent just lets you do your thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably like watching Netflix on the other monitor or something. The other like random card, and I registered this, Hemsley thought of it, and I registered it at the MCQ. And the games I drew it was very good. And then I was looking at lists online and saw some other Esper Planeswalker deck playing it. But I played a split of 1 Lyra in the sideboard and 1 Vona. And Vona blowing up Planeswalkers is actually really good.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. It's just another way to easily kill all these random permanents.
Vona's nuts, man. That card is really good. That's a card that we tried to make work when it was first printed, right? Because we thought it was busted, but yeah, maybe you could find a home still.
Yeah, I saw at the beginning of this format there was Esper control decks who were playing it in the sideboard, and then it kind of disappeared. But I'm not surprised to see other Esper Planeswalker decks picking it up. Card seems nuts.
Yeah, there's just a bunch of random permanents around that are hard to kill.
Anyway, thank you all for joining the club this week. Make sure, as always, you check out wizardtower.com for all your Magic single needs. Free shipping on singles in Canada, over $15. And if you want to support the podcast, you can find us on patreon.com/DWC Podcast. We're also on Twitter at DWC Podcast 1 or Facebook, the Disorganized Wizards Club Podcast. If you want to join the DWC Discord, just become a patron. We've got sweet tier benefits. I think it's the mid-tier gets you custom DWC tokens, which we have more getting printed right now. Stretch goal for DWC t-shirts. Lots of cool stuff. Great community. Check it out. Patreon.com/DWC Podcast. Thanks, Adam, for joining us from across the country. Is he gone?
I don't know. He might be gone. We might have lost him.
No, I'm still here. Yeah. Sorry. I had my mic muted for a sec while you were doing the closing spiel, so I didn't have any end of background noise and screw everything up. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's tough when there's a bit of a delay. We were trying to be real careful to not talk over everybody, but yeah, no, it's nice. I missed the podcast already, man. It's like something I'm so used to doing every week that it makes me homesick. So this was awesome to be able to phone this one in from the old southern reaches of eastern Alberta.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Later.